Hello and welcome. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you some of the deepest and brightest secrets of time management. My name is Peter Rowe and I'm the Managing Director of ProfiTune Business Systems. And it's taken my people and I nearly 10 years to put together the ideas and the systems that we're about to share with you here. Whenever we talk to business owners or managers or executives about their challenges, they'll cite a whole range of issues that are challenging them at the time. But when you boil it all down, they fall into three broad categories. They're either challenged by time, not enough of it, or not being able to manage what they have well enough. It boils down to managing people, the people who work with and for them. Or it comes down to managing the resources of the business, everything they've got, their assets, their systems, their equipment, their money, etc. And yet, every one of those owners or managers, when we talk a little further with them, will admit that if their own management of their own time were better, they would spend more time developing the people who work with them so that they could do a better job of managing the resources of the business, and everyone's problem would be solved. So what I'd like to do in the successive time that we have together here is to share with you some of the systems and processes we've put together to make it possible for anyone to, we reckon, double their productivity and at the same time halve their stress rates. So if you're prepared to learn a better way of working and to take some of the pressure off yourself while improving your performance, you're in the right place. So shortly I'm going to share with you the components of the time management system we've put together, and then I'm going to run through how to use it, how we've found best to use it, and then I'm going to give you some hints and tips about how you can get the most out of it personally. So please come and join me now as we go through the components of the ProfiTune time management system. Okay, let's talk about what it takes to comprise an effective time management system. Essentially, what we're wanting to do is to be able to manage the things that are happening right now, the things that are going to happen within the reasonably foreseeable future, maybe 1, 2, 3 months ahead, and then the things that we want to keep track of that are happening on a much longer cycle, perhaps an annual cycle, or perhaps those ideas that we wake up in the middle of the night with and know that we can make $1 million out of if we got some basic things together over the next year. So ideas or concepts or things that we want to put off into the future. So any good time management system is going to need to have close, medium and near storage systems. The system we've put together consists firstly of controlling the now. So 3 components in the time management system, the ProfiTune time management system that is, and the first of those is the storage folder. Now, the storage folder simply consists of 366 daily task sheets, each of which is dated, and about 14 undated daily task sheets which may be needed for the occasion when you're out in the field and don't have this month's daily task sheets with you, more of which I'll explain in a moment. So the big fat folder in the system is just 380 sheets designed to help you to manage today's tasks. In addition to that, we also have a time management manual. Now, in our world, this is called a business building block, or BBB, or 3B. And a 3B for us is an adult self-learning manual. So when you go through your time management 3B, you'll find not only an expose on how time management works for anyone and everyone, but also how this particular time management system works in detail. So the business building block, or 3B, contains information, knowledge for you on how to better manage your time regardless of what system you're using, and then how to better manage your time specifically using the ProfiTune system. But it also contains, in a tab at the back, a blue tab called Specific Systems, it contains some of the consumable templates that we'll use when it comes to putting together our own personalised time management system. Now, be aware, this particular manual handles a very wide range of circumstances in which people may need to manage their time. And what you're going to do shortly, in this course of this video, is put together your ProfiTune time management system customised specifically to meet your needs by using selected components from this manual. Then the third component of the time management system is a leather valise. Now, since we're in the business of business, we call this our profit planner, because profit is one of those delicate things that if it's not planned, it tends not to happen. So the ProfiTune Profit Planner is designed to keep all of your time management components in the one place. This literally becomes your travelling office. You can throw it under your arm and out the door, and everything that you need is with you. Now, we'll often be asked, what about an electronic version of this? I use my PDA, I use Outlook, I use and a whole series of other electronic time management systems. And our advice is please keep using them, because they integrate beautifully with this system. But if, in computer terms, if you don't want to go ranging through a whole set of files, you desire direct access, this is your direct access system. Open your page, you write on it, and it's all in front of you. It doesn't need a PowerPoint, it doesn't need any of that nature. So if you're currently using a PDA for your contacts, we're not going to suggest that you put your contacts into your time management system. If you're using your PDA to manage your appointments and it gives you reminders, that can be an excellent asset as well. But when it comes to keeping track of your tasks, trying to do that on a PDA is a bit like trying to study an elephant looking through a straw. There's just not enough of the whole picture available to you at a sufficient resolution for you to make sense of it. And that's where the time management system kicks in. So 3 components: your storage folder, your time management 3B or business building block, which is the manual on how to use your time management system and how to generally manage time better, and your profit planner, which is the leather valise which contains everything. So I'm sure you're wanting to get started straight away. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is take your profit planner, open it up by unzipping it, and let's have a look what's in there. Now, when you open it, you'll find that on the left-hand side, one of the things you're going to see is a calculator and some storage folders and spaces for business cards, etc. So pretty standard for any decent sort of time management system. You'll also notice that the first thing that faces you is our welcome letter, and we mean it. So we welcome you to the opportunity to use this system, and we hope that you'll get everything out of it that we put into it in the first place. So what I'd like you to do is take a few moments to pause the tape or video that you're watching at the moment, and then read through the welcome, and then I'll ask you to take it out and discard it. Because one of the rules of your time management system, particularly a profit planner, is you don't carry anything around with you that you're not going to use. So having read our welcome letter, you're going to put it aside, remember our kind wishes forever, but not carry it with you anywhere other than in your heart. Okay. The next thing you'll find is my agreement with me. Now, one of the things that we've had to become very good at in the process of business coaching and business improvement processes is teaching people to change their behaviour. And one way in which you can change behaviour is to simply write out your intention to do so. And in neurophysiological terms, what you're doing is creating a small predisposition within yourself to act in accordance with what you've written. All human beings like to be congruent. We like to be consistent in the things that we say and do. And so by writing out commitments to yourself, you nudge yourself towards doing those things. So what I'd also like you to do shortly is pause this video and then to read through the agreements that you're going to make with yourself, put your name at the top of it, tick only those agreements or undertakings that you're comfortable with, that you're prepared to take on, and then sign it and date it. And this, strangely enough, is going to stay in your time management system until such time as you're dealing with it consistently. So you might like to pause the video now, go through the My Agreement with Me page, and make your commitment to you to use this system in a way that will get the best return on your investment. The next thing that you will find as you go through the Profit Planner is a series of calendars. Now, we don't know how you work. So if you're in the habit of consulting your PDA or some other device for a calendar, then you probably won't need the current year and next 2 years' calendars that are inserted in here. If you have no use for them, you can remove them, put them aside, and shortly we'll put those into the storage folder where we keep anything that's not going to be used. In addition to the annual calendars, 1 year to a page, you'll also find a quarterly planner, which enables you, in A3 fold-out cardboard, gives you the ability to keep track of appointments. So all that's needed there is there's provision for about 6 or 7 appointments a day, and all you need to do is write a person's name in there or a shorthand note to yourself as to who you might be seeing at that time, or use this to block out times in which you're not available in the office, or you may be travelling or something of that nature. So take a good look at the Profit Planner appointment calendar. Decide whether it currently has a use for you or not. If it does, for blocking times out or for keeping track of appointments in a way that makes sense to you, then please leave it in here. And if not, and in my case it doesn't because I use a PDA, then if not, take it out and put that aside, and we'll put it into a storage folder for later reference if we decided at that point that it's worth keeping. Okay, the next tab you'll come to is a blue tab called Current Month. Now, what I need you to do here is go to your storage folder, which I'm going to do with you. Open the storage folder up, find your current month. I happen to be taping this I give my age away. I happen to be videoing this in the month of October, so I'll flip towards the back of it. I'll find the October month's daily task sheets. They're preceded by a blue sheet. I suggest you leave the blue sheet in the storage folder. You take out the month of October plus the blue sheet that follows it. It's a handy way of separating a few things. Take that out and then place those behind the current month blue tab in your Profit Planner. So I've now got a blue tab to the left, which is blind, it doesn't have anything on it, and on the right hand side I'm looking at the 1st of October because that's my current month. So go ahead and do that, and when you've caught up, then the next thing you'll see is the next tab is one that's a little unique, or it is unique in the sense that it's got a today and a major tasks tab to it. I want you to take that out of your Profit Planner. I want you to find the current month of the current day of the month, I apologise, and which for me in this case, I happen to be videoing this on the 5th of October, so I would put the tab in front of the 5th of October, and it would mean that the 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th of October is now in the past. Now don't worry about wasting things, we can cycle straight through 1 year and come back and use those later if you're so disposed, but for the moment I'm starting on the day that you're installing this system. So I'm now looking at my Profit Planner, which has my daily task sheet for the current day on my right hand side and a blank on the left hand side with 2 red tabs on it, one of which reads Major Tasks. For the template that will sit on the left hand side, we're going to go to the 3B, to the manual that I mentioned previously. You're going to turn that over to the tab that reads Specific Systems. It's the second blue tab. You'll need to release the little keeper on the top of the paperwork, and you'll see that if you turn over the Specific Systems tab, the very first thing you see will be a major task list worksheet, and it reads Purpose, Instructions, and at the end of the month. Okay? Now, this is the back of the sheet, because on the other side of this sheet is the actual work side. The back of it simply contains instructions. So what you're now going to do is place this sheet on the left-hand side of your Profit Planner opposite your daily task sheet. I can close or put aside the 3B for the moment. I will come back to it for some other templates in a moment. But right now, what we have is what I call your dashboard. Because on your left-hand side, you should have Major Task List. On your right-hand side, you should have Daily Task Sheet. Now, the other template that we will go and get right now, because it has to do with how we manage things in time, is I want you to go back to your 3B. I want you to go back to the blue tab that says Specific Systems, and I want you to go through the various templates that are there until you find the one titled Ideas to Improve the Business. You'll find it towards the back of the stack. There's 3 of those because these are consumables and you can use them at a later date. And with the Ideas to Improve the Business template in your hand, then I want you to, in your Profit Planner, that's the leather valise, your little walking office, I want you to go to Future Business, the blue tab that says Future Business, flip that over, And you should be looking at a series of coloured plastic tabs towards the back of the Profit Planner, and one of those will have an indication on there that it's future business, and it will be ideas to improve the business. And in my particular setup here, that's a cherry coloured plastic tab. So I'm going to take the cherry coloured plastic tab out. I'm going to put it behind the blue future business tab, and I'm going to put my ideas to improve the business behind the cherry plastic tab. If you take a few minutes to work that through, that's fine. And then join me again with your major task list on your left and today's daily task sheet on your right. Okay. This essentially is your dashboard, and this is how things work. In the day-to-day flow of work, you're going to come across tasks which either have to be done now or have to be done shortly, or a major task that I can't handle all in one hit, or just one of those ideas that is really good. I wouldn't like to lose it, but I can't do anything with it now. And the question I have is, if the thing is going to be done today, where should you write it? That's right, on your daily task sheet. If it's something of a larger task that you're going to have to chip into pieces and do over a period of time, or which you're going to have to set aside an hour or so to do at another time, then where should that go? And if you came up with major task lists, that's correct. And lastly, you wake up at 2 a.m. And you've just had the best idea of your life. It's going to take considerable resources. It may be a year before you can get enough together in the business to do it, but you don't want to lose that brilliant idea. Where should that go? And if you thought ideas to improve the business, you're right. Now, a little bit of psychology here. Most of those ideas bubble up out of your unconscious. And your unconscious is an interesting beast to live with, because programming your unconscious for maximum performance is a cross between training a puppy and programming a computer. So the best way to create a good flow of ideas from within yourself is to acknowledge and value those ideas that do come to you. And by storing them in the system here, one, they won't go away, and two, you're acknowledging to yourself that you are resourceful, you are innovative, and that you do welcome and value ideas that your unconscious gives you. So we're just training you a little more effectively in the process of being a better manager and a better ideas person. Okay. Having a look at the daily task sheet on your right-hand side, this is the way that we start each day. But it's actually the major task list is how we start using the time management system, because what we've found in the past is that most business managers or owners have a huge list of things that they've got to do, and most of those things they keep in the back of their head. Now, the challenge of walking around with the ominous pile of things I've got to do rattling around in the back of your mind is very much akin to you loading 10 programs into your computer before you load the one that you actually want to work with. And for those of you that have had experience of such a thing, you'll be well aware of the fact that as you load those other programs, they generally take up all of the available RAM. And then when you load the program you want to work with, it slows right down for a number of technical reasons. Often it's trying to work straight from the hard drive back to the screen and back again, a very slow process, rather than working in fast RAM. We're no different to the computer in that respect. So when you walk around with a whole bunch of other things on your mind, then there's only a very, very tiny portion of your RAM, of your free thinking space, available to deal with this particular project. And there are other negative implications as well, because if you're now taking up the last available piece, skerrick, of your reasoning power, and someone says, "Excuse me, can you give me a hand for a minute?" it's not unusual that you would respond in a stressful, tense, and maybe not all that resourceful way. And the reason for that is you're overloaded. And yet there's a very simple solution to this. The same as if we were to write the programs back to hard drive, they're not gone, they're just out of RAM. Then if you take the tasks that you know you've got to do and write them out on your major task list, or 2 or 3, or as one young IT executive took 8 lists of things, then finally you'll get to the point where there's nothing more to remember because it's all on paper. Now, that's not that you forget it or it goes out of consciousness, but there's no longer the need to recall it. There's no longer the fear of forgetting it. It's just on paper. And always remember that the faintest ink will outlast the longest memory. So getting something down on the page means there's no need for you to carry that around in your head any longer. It also means that instead of it being some sort of amorphous, unquantified mass of things I've got to do, you're now down to the point where at least you've got a list you can get in front of you, and you can start to apply some time frames and some priorities to that list and start to tame it. And one of the things we're going to suggest you do shortly is delegate some of that off, so that, one, it unloads you, and two, it starts to empower and develop someone who works with you. But for the time being, the first step in using a good time management system is to get a hold of the actual tasks that are on your plate. So go ahead now, stop the video, and write out a list of the major tasks that face you. Once you've completed that, please come back to the video and we'll start to deal with the very interesting and immediate issues of managing your daily task sheet. Okay, welcome back. What we're now going to have a look at is the daily task sheet. There are some very basic rules which are outlined in the Time Management 3B, which tell you exactly how to use this manual. In fact, everything that I'm telling you here will be told to you in more detail and probably in a better thought out fashion in the Time Management 3B. So all you're getting is my overlay, if you like, on the other information. But to use the daily task sheet to tame your time, to get control of your time and your tasks and yourself, the procedure is quite simple, straightforward, and there are no real variations in it because we've worked out what works and we've left out everything that doesn't work. So you'll notice that at the top it's got today is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday through the weeks. Simply circle the day of the week that you're currently working in and then finish the date. In my case, it's 5th of October 2000 and I'm videoing this in 2009. So 2009. The next thing you'll notice, it has the headings on the columns. The from heading indicates the time at which you may have to start a task if it's time-based. In other words, if it's an appointment or you have to do something at a specific time of the day. If, on the other hand, you go to write a task down that has no particular time at which it needs to be completed, then don't worry about a from. Although, I'll shortly tell you another way in which you can use this column as well. So, you'll also notice it's got today's tasks or comments, start the day at and finish the day at. Now, one of the things that I like my clients to get a handle on is just how many hours they're working. Because if they're working beyond about 10 hours a day, generally speaking, the next hours after that aren't very productive. And the next hours 2 hours after that aren't very productive at all. And then you can get to the point where 16 hours into the day, you're generally underproductive or reverse productive in the sense you start to undo some of the good you may have done earlier in the day. So one of the things we like to do is have clients keep tabs on the amount of time that they're actually spending at their work. So start the day at the precise time you actually start and finish the day at, and I'd like you to clock off there after you've finished this daily task sheet. So the last thing you do working with a daily task sheet is write your clock off time, if you like, for yourself. You'll also notice there are columns titled priority, est time, that's estimated time, actual time, and a code. Now, the code we'll come back to in a moment, but the way we want to work now is at the beginning of the day, the very first thing you do is, I'm sure some of you arrive at work with 2 or 3 things you've thought of at the kitchen table or on the way to work, on the commute, whatever. Those things that are on your mind from earlier in the day that you need to get down, write them down. So put down the list of things that you need to do today. You might also refer to yesterday's daily task sheet to make sure that any uncompleted things from there are either moved onto today's daily task sheet to be completed or moved instead into storage on your major task list, or ultimately you can sit there and look at some of the things from yesterday. You can ask yourself the question, 3 years from now, if I haven't done this particular task, will the business suffer? If the answer is no, you've got to ask yourself whether you should perhaps delete it, because there are some things that just don't need doing, and yet the business will still move forward strongly. So that's a decision on your part. Don't be a slave to ritual. Don't be a slave to thinking you have to do the minor things. Make sure you major in the major, not majoring in the minors. Okay. So We start the day with the thoughts at the top of our head, the things we have to do. Anything that comes out of our daily task sheet from the day before. Anything that's on our Outlook or PDA or appointment system or the appointment calendar from the front of your profit planner if you're using that system. So those appointments are critical. And of course, you would write the from time down, the start time for those appointments. So 2:45, Ron Jenkins regarding advertising or something of that nature would go down as one of the lines. Then there's that 1 minute that you need to invest where you've got your day laid out in front of you and you just need to pause for a moment to see if there's anything else. Now, if there's no other task that comes to mind at this point, please don't be worried. Don't feel that you may sit there waiting for things to happen all day because everything else is going to happen. So all we're going to do is capture in the first instance the things that you recognise at the beginning of the day that you need to do. The next thing you're going to do is place a priority on each of those. Now, down the bottom of the daily task sheet, you'll see the priority list. Right? So your priority will be high, which means I must do it today. In other words, must. There's no option. It may be register the car on the last day of registration or pay my insurance the last day it's available or lodge my tax return on the last day. They're musts. Most of the things you do in business are mediums, which are should-dos. Should be done today in order for things to move on so that other people aren't waiting, etc. Of course, appointments are highs. They're must-dos because you've made a commitment to meet someone. But most tasks turn out to be mediums, should be done. And then there's the nice-to-do things, the L's. So low-priority tasks are nice to do. Medium are should do, and high are absolutely must do today. So make sure that if you put a H on something, then it's going to get done today. So having allocated a priority, the next thing you need to do is estimate the amount of time that that task will take. Now, I'll give you a warning. Most males are worse at this than women, but most of us tend to underestimate the amount of time that small tasks will take. So we may think that it'll only take 2 minutes to do an email response, but in actual fact it takes 5. Now, 2 minutes, 5 minutes is not much. But when there's 50 emails, and you originally thought it would take 100 minutes, and it takes 250 minutes, then you've got a time management problem of your own creating. So make sure that when you look at small tasks that you estimate realistically the amount of time it'll actually take to start on that task and then to finish it. So estimated time is important. The reverse applies to major tasks. What many of us do is put major tasks off because we think they'll take all this time. It's going to, I need half a day. When in actual fact, all we need is probably 2 uninterrupted hours and we could knock the task off. What happens though, and you can ask yourself this question, what does happen when you think the task is going to take a large amount of time? And if your answer was, I tend to put it off, waiting until I have half a day free, then one of the things that you're going to realise is that you keep putting things off, waiting for a half day, and you're not going to get half a day free. In fact, one of the articles in the Time Management 3B is a little piece of research by Henry Mintzberg, and I think in that he said something about managers get a half day available to them about once every 3 weeks. So if you have two tasks that require, in your estimation, first estimation, half a day each, you're going to be a long time waiting. So the lesson is that when you focus and get stuck into a larger task, it usually takes less time than you think. So be relatively tight on your time estimating for large tasks and really relatively generous in the amount of time you allocate to smaller tasks. So having written down the estimated time, the next challenge is to add those up here at the beginning of the day before we start anything else. Now, the fact of the matter is that you can't fill 8 hours of available time with 8 hours of tasks. That just won't work. In the Time Management 3B, we reference back to the little slider puzzle that many of us had as children. You may remember one which had perhaps the pattern of a cat on it, or a number of letters or numbers which you had to move the little tiles around within the frame until they eventually lined up in some sort of order or formed a pattern. Now, if you recall that little slider puzzle, I asked you what was the most important feature of that slider puzzle. I think it won't be long before you arrive at the answer. It's the blank space. It's the missing tile that makes it possible for us to move other tiles around. Now, what's that got to do with time management? Well, the fact is that across the board generally, and some positions and task descriptions are different, but generally speaking, we need about a 40% blank in our day, which means we can fill about 60% of our available workday with scheduled tasks, but we need to leave about 40% of our day for unscheduled tasks, the things that just happen. So 60% of an 8-hour day is close enough to 5 hours, and 60% of a 10-hour day is close enough to 6 hours. And that's about all you can total. So, or you can pre-plan. So when you do your estimated time column and you put a subtotal in there for how much you plan on doing today, anything over your 60% limit, you need to immediately move. You can either move it to the left onto your major task list. You can move it to your right onto tomorrow's sheet, but don't move it too many days forward. Or you can delegate it. Or you can dump it. You can decide not to do it. So it's important, firstly, to start the day in such a way that the odds are in your favour that you'll actually finish the day having achieved what you set out to do. And if you do that, then that's the first step in success. Then we've got a nice 60% of our day or less, with a bit of luck, listed. That'll just be a list of the description of each of the lines will be a description of the task itself and something just to keep it in memory as to what we need to do. Then a few other little courtesies we do at the beginning of the day to start ourselves off. You'll notice that on the daily task sheet, bottom left, are my goals. Now, there's not much point starting a day without knowing what your goals for the business or your role in the business are overall. Otherwise, it's a bit akin to getting in your car to decide to go on holidays, starting it, driving out the driveway and turning left for no good reason because you still haven't decided where you're going. So before you turn left with your daily task sheet, it's an idea to remind yourself of what your goals are, what's important to the business and to you, and make sure that this daily task list here is actually heading you towards the achievement of your goals. If that's good, right, tick the box. The other thing you'll notice is that there are 3 little boxes with sayings on them at the bottom of every daily task sheet, and they're different. There are thousands of them. These you can regard as little mental antioxidants. The world is full of negativity. The entire media organisations are set up to sell negativity, things that are going wrong, bad stuff, bad news, etc. Well, we just believe that you should inoculate yourself every day against that. So you'll find 3 little sayings here that give you a bit of an antioxidant, a bit of a shot in the arm of positivity, of optimism, or a little bit of philosophy. So it's a good idea to tick those as you read them, and we think you should read them every day a couple of times, 3 times. So tick them each time you've read them. Don't tick them 3 times because you read them once. Okay. So just a little bit of mental health, if you like. Now, what about unscheduled tasks, or as many people call them, interruptions? So you and I probably need a little bit of terminology clarification here. For me, an interruption is your dear sainted Aunt Mary ringing you in the middle of the workday to tell you what the vet said about her ancient cat's kidneys. As far as I'm concerned, that's an interruption. But a staff member needing guidance, a customer ringing to inquire about something or even to make a complaint, a supplier ringing to negotiate a deal or anything of that nature, even a walk-in opportunity, all those things are part of the job, part of the business. They are, in fact, unscheduled tasks. And the daily task sheet exists to capture those. Because unless you can put some controls around unscheduled tasks, then you'll find that the time thieves steal your whole day in slices of 5 minutes. Okay, so the procedure you're going to follow in relation to unscheduled tasks is, firstly, as a person rings, walks in, interrupts you, or does any other thing to bring themselves to your attention, the first thing you do is write their name or their initials in a relevant blank daily task sheet task line. The next thing you're going to do, as that unscheduled task unfolds, you're going to put a label to it, what the topic is, what the task is, or something of that nature. See, that's the early part of the conversation. Yes, I understand you want me to do this, or you'd like me to give you that, etc. So we've now captured that piece of vital information. If there's a contact number and they're not part of your normal contact list, it'd be an idea to pencil it down there, or even use the column, the left column. There's no marks for neatness in this system. There's only marks for what works. So capture what you need to, but before you undertake to do anything in relation to this particular unscheduled task, would it be wise to look to see what your scheduled tasks make possible, and also to warn this person, because most unscheduled tasks are the result of a person, to warn this person that you already have 3 high priority tasks ahead of what you can do for them, and would it be all right with them if you got to this task after you've completed the ones that are ahead of it? Now that's a courtesy, almost a rhetorical question, because the answer is I can't get to your task until I finish these higher priority ones, unless of course the unscheduled task is in itself a trump. It's the highest of your tasks, your priorities right now. So one of the things that will stop you being derailed throughout the day is to look at each unscheduled task as it turns up and fit it into the plan. Now don't be worried that you're now changing your plan. An old Prussian Field Marshal, Field Marshal Helmuth von Moltke said, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. But you can't go to war without one. So your battle plan that you wrote out in the first 5 minutes of the day is fine, but you're here to do business, so let's find out what has to fit into that. But if you can possibly preserve some of your high priorities, the things you knew you had to do, and protect them from some of the unscheduled tasks that are in fact of a lower priority, then you'll be doing well. So it's not unusual for you to develop a little mantra, a little off-the-head saying that simply says, John, I'm happy to do that for you, but I have 2 other tasks ahead of it. I'll finish those around 2 this afternoon. Would it be okay with you if I get back to you before close of business? And you'd be surprised the number of times that the apparently urgent task, the giver simply says, oh, yeah, that'll be fine. Because it was urgent for them to get it off their plate, not necessarily urgent that it be done. So get into the habit of then scheduling unscheduled tasks into your day. Now, there are some side benefits to this particular strategy. One of the side benefits is that all of the research indicates that any interruption at all will cost you about 15 minutes of lost time as you reconnect with what you were doing before the interruption. What our clients report, and what we've found personally from using this system, is that because I'm anchored on my daily task sheet and I'm only recording the unscheduled task and I'm arranging to handle it later, I snap back to what I was doing. So we find that the recovery time from an interruption is about half. And that's a remarkably good saving over a day when you might have 10 or 15 unscheduled tasks. So our day starts to unfold. As it unfolds, as you finish a job, you'll mark off the actual time that you took to do that job. So if it took 20 minutes and you estimated 40, congratulations. Next time you tackle a task of that nature, remember it doesn't quite take as long as you thought. The other thing that I'll often do myself is that I'll use the from column as a sort of stopwatch. So if I pick up a task that didn't need to be done at any particular time, but I want to keep tabs on my use of time, I'll often then look at the clock and write the time that I'm starting that task in the from column on the same line as the task. And then when I've finished the task, I can easily tell how much time it took me to do that task. Now, this isn't a precise science, and don't worry about the fact you took 3 or 4 phone calls in the middle of it, etc. You can estimate that. But it does help me keep tabs on when I've rung someone and left a message, perhaps, and they didn't receive it, or something of that nature. So it's a small load to carry and has some benefits to write the time at which you start a task in the from column. Notwithstanding the fact that any task which is an appointment or time sensitive, you will always write in the left column. For example, when I said that I would get back to that person before 5 o'clock, I'd probably put 4:30 in the from column of the particular task where I undertook to finish something before the end of the day for another party. When you've finished a task or dealt with a task, then there is a code at the bottom you'll see for what you've done. So in the code column, you'll tick any task you completed. That one's pretty obvious. I have the habit of, if I ring someone to complete a task and they're not available, I'll put in the task bar, I'll put TRB, which is my code for to ring back, and I'll put a half a tick. I'll begin the tick in the code column. That indicates to me I've started this action, but I'm waiting a reaction from someone else. So completed tasks, tick them. If I can't do the task today, but I'm going to do it tomorrow, or maybe the next day, but generally I don't move tasks forward 2 or 3 days, I'll use a right arrow to indicate that I've put it onto the next day. If, on the other hand, I don't know when I'm going to get to this task, it may be an unscheduled task that's turned up, it's too big for me to tackle now, but it did turn up today, then I'm going to transfer it to the left onto my major task list. I'll give it a priority over there and a due date, and then I'll handle it at some time in the near future. If, however, gloriously, I've managed to delegate a task, then it'll be a circle in the code column and the initials of the person to whom I delegated. Now, there's another technique here which can make a huge difference to your effectiveness as a manager. So let's have a look at how we might be able to handle delegations much, much more resourcefully than you may have been doing in the past. So to do that, we need to go and get another template. So you'll go back to your 3B behind the blue Specific Systems tab, and you'll find the template that says functions delegated to me. No, we want the one that says delegated functions. Okay, it's the next one after major task list generally, and we want the one that says delegated functions. Now, delegated functions is a simple way of tracking who I asked to do what by when. Doing it on my daily task sheet's great, but the daily task sheet's going to fold into the past as I move beyond it. And if I ask someone to do something next week, it means shuffling back through the daily task sheets in order to catch that up. So I can handle this in a couple of ways. If I've delegated something to someone and the time frame's more than a short time in the future, I can use my delegated functions template, which goes behind the monitoring tab, the mustard-coloured monitoring tab. And before we get there, we're going to look for the plastic tab that corresponds to it. Which is, in my system here, is a blue tab. So I'll take the blue tab out. Yours may be different, by the way. Sometimes we use different colours. The blue tab, put it in there, and then I'm going to put the delegated functions template behind it. The way, and we turn back to our major task list, daily task sheet, our dashboard. The way that we would use that template would be, if we delegate a task to someone and we ask them to bring it to us tomorrow, it's easy enough simply to flip over to tomorrow's daily task sheet and put a note there that I'm expecting so-and-so to bring me back the results of such and such. Now, that's just my check on the system. What's smart in delegation is to ask the other person, as the last step in your delegation, ask the other person to take responsibility for bringing that to you anyway. But if they also are aware of the fact that you've recorded that, either on the next daily task sheet, or we go over to our monitoring, pick up our blue tab, delegated functions, and write in there the date at which we delegated, the description of the delegated task, the initials of the person we gave it to, the date that we ask them to bring us an update on it, not us chase them up, but them to bring us an update, and then the target date by which we want it finished. If we were to write that in there, then one of the other things we'll probably do at the beginning of any day, as we put together our tasks for that day, will be to check to see if any delegated functions are due today. Make sense? Okay. So, or there may be tasks which we thought we'd get through today, which we just didn't make, and we're not going to worry about. They've passed into the past, put a cross next to it, it's finished. A little footnote about personal tasks. Just about every conscientious worker that I know of, and particularly those in management positions, sacrifice personal time for the business. They put time into doing their professional tasks and they do it in their personal time. So is it unreasonable to do some personal tasks during normal work hours, given that you'll make up the ground elsewhere? So one of the things we've found, particularly with executives, is that if you rush through the day and don't do the things you need to do for yourself, whether it's as mundane as pick up your dry cleaning or buy theatre tickets or remember to buy an engagement present or something of that nature, if you don't do those things, over a period of time it can tend to build up a degree of resentment because the business keeps stealing my time. I don't have any time for me. And the cure is so easy. Simply add your personal tasks to your daily task sheet and work them into the tasks that you're going to do for the business. Now, those personal tasks are often quite minor. They're what we call gravel. And one of the analogies you'll come across in the time management system, we talk about rocks and gravel. So let's do an imagination exercise with you. I have here a very large jar. It is a very wide neck. It's glass. It has a screw top. Also here I have a specific pile of rocks about half the size of my fist, and I proceed to put all of the rocks into the jar and shake it gently so as not to break the glass, and then screw the lid down when there's no more room for any more rocks, and we look at it. Is that jar now full? Now, it's pretty obvious we could put other stuff in there. We could put smaller rocks in or gravel or perhaps sand. So if we were to then put gravel in and shake it down and then put sand in and shake it into the spaces between the gravel and finally top it off and screw the lid on, is it now full? Well, no, we could actually put beer in there because there's always room for beer. So if we then filled it up with beer and screwed the lid on, would it be full? For those of you that did chemistry at school, you're probably going to want to put salt in and dissolve it in the beer, but we'll leave that out. We won't ruin good beer. And we'll say that it's full. The intuitive exercise is the next part of it. I think you'll know the answer intuitively. I now start with an identical jar and identical materials. But if I were to put the beer in first, then the sand, then the gravel, would the same number of rocks go in? And the answer is no, they won't. So the question is, what's that got to do with time management? And what should have occurred to you is the rocks, they're the H's, the highs, the must-dos, the big jobs, the key things. The gravel, they're often the M's and the L's, the mediums and the lows. And the sand, similar small trivial things. And the beer, well, that's personal. But your personal tasks will fit in between the large tasks. The small tasks fit in between the large tasks if the large tasks get the priority that they deserve. But if you do it the other way around, and I'll just clear my emails first, and then I'll do these other little things because they're easy to clear the decks to do the big task, you'll usually find you've finished clearing the decks about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that doesn't leave any time for the rocks. And that pattern repeats itself time and again. So if you're one of the gravel specialists, now's time to start doing rocks first. And if you're one of those people who put yourself second all the time, start adding your personal tasks to your daily task sheet, even to your major task list, in order that they get done as well. You'll find as soon as you do that, you'll be less stressed and you'll be more productive. Now with that, we're almost finished the dashboard, the daily task sheet and major task list. One footnote about the major task list: if things on the major task list are big, then don't think you have to do them all on the one day, because we're going to track them. You see, that major task list is going to sit on our left for quite some time, even though each day we take our daily task sheet out and move it behind the major tasks list tab, so that we're now, in my example here on the 6th, I mean tomorrow, the major task list remains the major task list. So the left-hand side is more persisting, whereas the right-hand side is only today. Now, I'm still on the 5th of October, so I'll bring that back. And we're going to look at how we finish the 5th of October, or finish the day that you're on. Okay, with the front of your daily task sheet completed, the day's almost over. But there are 5 vital minutes that you're going to invest as you finish a day that are going to make a world of difference going forward. Because in that 5 vital minutes, you're going to start the process of coaching yourself to improve your own performance. So let's have a look at how that applies. The last thing on the front of the daily task sheet you might have noticed is the fax to and from provisions, and that's if we're doing monitoring for you. If you're paying for that service, we'll monitor your use of the daily task sheets for 30 days. It only takes 28 days for a human to establish a habit, and in that 28 days or 30 days will guide you in the perfect use of the system. The old saying, practice makes perfect, is wrong. It's practice makes permanent. It's perfect practice that makes perfect. And with 30 days of monitoring, we can perfect your process in using the system. Having said that, the manual, the 3B, contains all of the information you'd need to self-train. So, provided you use the system fully and use the manual to guide yourself, you'll come out with a good result anyway. Okay, so with the day done, turning over to the back of the sheet, and you'll see that there's provision on the back of the sheet for some reflection. The first is, these matters I did well. It's important that you praise yourself. It's important that you recognise the victories of the day, because that'll lift your energy levels. It's important also that you recognise the things you can improve on. So we've got a little provision that I can improve on these matters. And this is you coaching you for better performance in future. And then lastly, a little general reflection to see what life or business lessons you may have learned on that day. Now, years ago, probably the best example of this I've ever seen came from a diesel technician who sent me in his daily task sheet for monitoring. On the back it had these matters I did well, and we discussed in a coaching session previously how if he got out and talked to more people about his services, he would inevitably gain work from it. So on this particular day, a week or so after that session, came the note, these matters I did well. Talked to some people, got some business. I can improve on these matters. Talk to more people, get more business. And then the business or life lessons I've learned today, he wrote, the more people I talk to, the more business I get. Now, there's almost a sales book just in those 3 panels. So by you doing a few moments of reflection, you're going to improve your own personal effectiveness, and you're going to bring yourself into centre, operating optimally. It just happens that way if you use the system. There's also provision there for you to note which part of the day was the most productive and least productive. Obviously, if there's a pattern to your day or to your personality, where you're a lark and you get things done in the morning, or an owl and you get things done at night, then perhaps it's smart to channel some of the larger tasks, the harder tasks, into your most productive time. Or there's times during the day when people leave you alone, or whatever the circumstance may be. What were your biggest time wasters today? If you record that, a few weeks of reflection, you're going to realise some of the things you don't want to do any longer. Which activities need more time and less time? Again, you guiding you as to how to optimise the use of your time. And beginning tomorrow, what will I do to make better use of my time? Again, you guiding you to do different things. So it's worth 2 minutes of reflection to write yourself a commitment as to what you're going to change. And for much the same reason we talked about in the beginning when I said write out your commitments to you, this is another commitment to you. If you make those commitments each day, like dropping water on a stone, you'll eventually make the changes, or quickly, as the case may be. The next step, the next panel, is for the people I praised today. Now, it's a fact that when we work with business executives and managers, we can ask them how they think they treat their people, and generally they say they do pretty well. But if we get them to record the number of positive comments they make back towards their staff, it's a lot less than what they think they make. Maybe those comments are made in their head and never make it out into the real world. For whatever reason, people don't praise as much as they could. Now, praise is the lowest cost coin in your treasury, and yet the highest impact. And its ability, using praise to influence and modify other people's behaviour, the potential is enormous, and yet it's underutilised. So, in one character's phrase, make sure you catch people doing things right and then praise them. But specifically praise the action, not the person. So praise the person for the action, but always put the focus on the action. That way other people hearing the praise realise that they too could get the same praise simply by doing the same action. Okay? So putting a note down of who you praise today will encourage you into the habit of praising people. It'll also, on reflection, prevent you from praising the same people over and over again, and perhaps broaden your scope. The next one, the customers or clients I contacted today. Let's be very clear on this. This isn't you contacting people because they contacted you. This isn't reactive. This is you making outgoing calls. It may be to a customer who has no problems, whom you haven't had any really direct contact with apart from them ordering off you and them paying you for some time. But There's an ideal opportunity for you to improve customer relations, actually to develop them and to get some feedback, or to explore new work opportunities, sales, etc. It's not unusual for you making proactive outbound calls to your customers. It's not unusual for those calls to end in the customer saying something along the lines of, while you're there, and then placing some sort of an order or a request for further work, or etc. Then the last panel is other issues. Whatever turned up during the day, some of my clients philosophise in this area and write themselves a bit of a review on the day. The great thing here is that if you take the few minutes to dump the contents of your brain onto the back of the page, you don't have to carry it around with you. You don't have to lay there at night thinking back through the day instead of sleeping. So get into the habit of taking what's in your head, putting it on the sheet, doing your review at the end of the day, and then using your thinking time in bed for something a little more resourceful or enjoyable. The last item that's on the sheet are mood meters. We keep track of your enthusiasm, your commitment, your personal progress meter, and your business progress. Now, these are non-reflective, and you can outthink yourself here. So the idea is grab the pen, put a stroke where you feel that your rating is today, and don't reflect on it. Otherwise, you're likely to overthink yourself into putting something that's better or worse than it really is. So just give yourself an indication of your mood, and then look at what you put. With all of that, we've now finished this day. If you're on the monitoring program, we'd like you then to scan and email or fax both sides of this sheet to us. On the other hand, if you are finished, and there's no unfinished tasks on here that need to be transferred either to tomorrow or to the major task list for later attention, then you take today's sheet out, go to the left, put it behind the major task list, and we're now looking at tomorrow. And if you particularly want to get a jump on things, you could start writing out the list of tasks for tomorrow. But at this point, we've actually finished the day-to-day use of your time management system. Now, there are a couple of extras, things that make this system work particularly well. So the first of those you'll notice in the back of your profit planner is a pad. And that pad has the feature of being spiral bound, perforated across the top, and drilled in a way that matches your folder. Many people use a journal, a notebook, a combination of the two, a diary, all sorts of things. What we recognise the absolute necessity of doing is pulling everything together into one place. So your pad, let's talk about how you might use that. Firstly, if you face one of those days from hell and you fill up your daily task sheet with tasks and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon you're still taking phone calls, you've still got unscheduled tasks flowing through to you, and I hope you're delegating them out as quickly, but regardless, and you may have completed your daily task sheet, filled it, the space is available, then simply take a sheet from your pad, write the date on the top of it, detach it if you like, or leave it on the pad, and start writing the next task and the next task and the next task. Now, for the neat ones, you can rule it up into a, from and tasks and priorities and everything column, but you know the drill by now, and generally it's enough simply to jot a time down as the unscheduled task turns up, a description of it, its priority, and the estimated time. And of course, any commitment that you made in relation to that, because we presume that in a day like this, you're certainly not going to be zigging and zagging from one unscheduled task to another, but instead you'll be storing them on your daily task sheet and your overflow sheet here in order to be able to handle them, even delegate them in an orderly fashion once you've got your high priority tasks out of the road. So make sure the high priorities don't get derailed by the unschedules. You may also find that you go to a meeting and you take notes from that meeting. The good habit is to simply date the top of the page, take whatever meeting notes you're going to take. Some of the items that come out of that meeting may actually turn into action items. You may choose to write them straight onto your daily task sheet or transfer them from your transcript of your meeting notes onto your daily task sheet or major task list and or delegate them after the meeting. But at the end of the day, any sheets that you've accumulated today should be detached from your pad and filed under the day that they relate to. Now, if you think forward over a period of a month, you're going to have your daily task sheets that are completed, and any additional pad sheets that you've completed for whatever reason, overflow tasks, meeting notes, etc., even your strategic thinking, rambling, etc., they all now form a journal of your month. And at the end of that month, you're going to take that month's daily task sheets out. You're going to file it in the correct order in your storage folder. You're going to take the next month out and put it into your profit planner and start afresh. Having, of course, at the end of that month, the previous month, checked to make sure there were no orphans left in your daily task sheets, nothing that had slipped through the cracks. One convention I have is to go through my daily task sheet, and when I'm sure that it's completed, put a diagonal through it, never to go back to it again. I know that the diagonal indicates that everything that was on there has been dealt with. Some small tricks of the trade. You'll remember at the beginning I said take out your month's daily task sheets plus the blue sheet. The reason I said that was because it's an idea to also take out a couple of the undated daily task sheets that are at the back of your storage folder and to put those behind your blue sheet. If we're in October and someone asks me to do something in November or December and it's something that I want to particularly capture right then on a daily task sheet, I can do it and simply date that sheet. When that month rolls round, I can either transfer what I've written on the undated sheet to the correctly dated sheet, or I can discard the correctly dated sheet and travel with what I've got. So the system will handle anything this month and anything in future months. Just carry a few undated daily task sheets with you. There are some other templates that are provided for you, and you'll find those in your Time Management 3B. So if we have a look through those, you'll find that there are additional templates for major task lists. So as your major task list fills up, you're going to treat it much the same as a daily task sheet. You'll cross off the things you've completed and transfer new things to, or existing things to, a new major task list. There are also additional templates for delegated functions for you to keep tabs on those as well. You may wish to keep tabs on functions delegated to me if other people are asking you to do things and you don't want them to drop off the list of what's to be done. And it may be more appropriate to keep them there than the major task list, but we leave that option to you. Not all of the system has to be used unless, of course, there's something that isn't in the time management system for you, the way you've currently got it organised, in which case go back to the 3B, you'll find we've covered it. We've had plenty of time to get this right. No one's brought up anything that in the way of time management that we don't cover. Okay. Some other templates are the praise register. Now, I'd only advocate you use that if you've got a large staff and you're wanting to spread the joy and make sure that you are praising and paying attention equally to people across the board. There'll be an indication of that when you look at your daily task sheets on the back and see you've praised the same person over and over again. Perhaps your executive assistant or perhaps a close manager or a close report. That's an indication of a bit of a challenge. And it's worth you then taking note of that and deciding whether you need to be spreading your attention a little broader than you currently are. In addition, there is ideas to improve the business, which we've mentioned, to capture those thoughts rather than let them go. There's contacts with future business potential. So if you're not in the habit of collecting a business card and then transferring that to your PDA or your contact management system, this may be worthwhile for you as well. If you are in the habit of collecting business cards, you'll notice towards the back there is also a plastic business card holder which you can simply use to store business cards until you make it through, on your profit planner that is, until you transfer those to whatever record system you've got. So within your profit planner is a small area there to contain about 24 business cards you may collect from other parties. So going past the contacts with future business potential, there's a customer contact register. These days, most people would manage to handle that through their PDA or contact system. And there are also matters to raise with my coach as a way of keeping track of things that you may want to raise with your business coach if you're on a coaching program. This is a core to our coaching program, this system. And there are some what we call flags. There are fail to plan and you plan to fail, and a few other sayings that you might care to display in a prominent position to kick yourself into gear to use your time management system to the best possible personal advantage. Well, there we are. We've covered the basics of using the time management system, the ProfiTune time management system, and all I'll do is advocate that you use it for 30 days, exactly as per the book. Go back to the manual, read it again and again to make sure there's nothing fallen through the cracks. And then if you wished for some feedback, then feel free to contact us and go on the monitoring system and we'll take you to the next level. Thank you very, very much for your investment of time in listening to me now, and also your investment in resources in purchasing or in considering purchasing the ProfiTune time management system. Thank you.